Sam H. up in Canada has been watching the show since 2018, and he's always wanted to use my forwarding service, and the perfect guitar finally showed up. Except for no, it's not a Charvel, it's a Carvin. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So here's the story. Sam found this at Guitar Center, and he's been watching the price go down and down and down, and he finally decided to pull the trigger. I'm surprised we even got a hard shell case with this thing. That is a beautiful upgrade, but wow. This is much darker green than our last Carvin we documented, where it had these multiplying inlays and this aqua tealish blue finish, neck through construction. That thing spoke to me, needed to document it. This company was founded in 1946 by Lowell Kiesel. However, in 1949, the brand Carvin Guitars was birthed due to his two kids, being named Carson and Gavin. Chop off the son, chop off the GA, put them together, Carvin. It's beautiful. And they made a whole bunch of stuff from there into the 80s, 90s, 2000s. However, in 2015, the company decided to split. The guitars will go in one area and amps and other things in another. So we have the birth of the brand Kiesel. And I've heard of those things. YouTubers talk about them things all the time. At least that's how it seems in my head. But if you're wondering where they got that branding from, it's returning to roots. It's the father's last name, as we just learned. But this model is known as a DC400, so we get to check that out today. It's kind of like a Super Strat meets your regular style, like Les Paul, almost Telecaster-like vibes. It's looking like we do indeed have a figured maple cap on it with a normal back body wood. And if you're going to get one of these, you might as well go for neck through construction. That's always a lot of fun. But uh-oh, we've got a vibrato system on here. Not a Floyd Rose though. Looks like a Wilkinson based on first impressions. We've got our regular crazy Carvin stuff going on. Somebody's liked playing this thing. They've worn through the finish. This thing feels rather thick, so they had to really been rubbing away. But now it looks like we've got an ebony fretboard with check those abalone inlays out. This really reminds me of the Les Paul because it's got a lot of that characteristic swirling within the shell pieces. That's pretty cool. But then as we continue up the back of the guitar, we get kind of a plain looking headstock. However, pay close attention. It's just like that last one. It's got that maple head cap veneer. So this has got a lot going on for it. And remember, we paid about $750 for this thing on sale. That is insanely spec'd. Well, that's the cool thing about Carvins, is they're made in the USA, and generally on the used market, you can get them for a relatively affordable price. They can range from $500 to $2,000, depending on the age, condition, and model. Tonight's episode's not sponsored by Guitar Center, but I'll leave an affiliate link in the description if you want to click on it just to browse some cool used Carvins they happen to have in their inventory, or you can check some out on Reverb. But Carvin is best known as a catalog/website order guitar, where they're made in the USA in San Diego to whoever's ordering it specs. So similar to the vendor mod shop where you choose from some pre-selected options to create the guitar of your dreams, but with more options. And for those of you that don't want to design your own guitar and you just like to see something and fall in love with it, they also had bass options, but that's not exactly what they were known for. But Kiesel, even till today, they have standard options that you can just buy straight out of the box, or you can make your own. In fact, I thought it'd be fun for this episode just to quickly go through and see what I would spec. How do you think I did? Interesting red moon inlay, nice darkened and natural burst. I didn't see the option to make it neck through or set neck. That's probably the only other thing I would change. But hey, that'd be a fun guitar to review. But from Jason Becker to Marty Friedman, there's a lot of big names who have used these old Carvins. So to learn more about Sam's new guitar, let's go ahead and throw it over onto the workbench to take an individual look at all these crazy parts and specs and figure out what all these mini toggle switches do. Inside our Carvin, I decided this thing was too dirty. I had to clean it. I mean, look at how the fretboard was. Finger cheese city. And then he had a whole bunch of scuffs and whatnot on the body. Now, I'm not going to say, hey, now this thing is perfect mint condition. Now we can see all the nicks and dings it's got all over. But at least we got that surface grime off, so now it's going to be a great review and demo. So let's start with our pickups. You might notice this looks a little bit strange. That's because we got 11 pull pieces on the top and bottom for a total of 22. And you can see somebody was using a pretty heavy pick because they were wearing through not only our pickup bobbins, but it looks to me like they might have been wearing through the pickup rings themselves just a little bit. But it's the M22N in the neck. Then the bridge is marked SD. I'm not sure if that's a different M22 or if that's just how they do their bridge pickups. I am not an expert in this brand. This is only the second one I've ever had. As far as readings within the circuit, I'm not getting anything usable. However, let's just say there's some scary stuff back there. But in my last Carvin, these pickups were pretty hot. But here's what our neck pickup cavity route looks like. Not too much going on in there. You can see some residual buffing compound / wax, something along those lines, but I don't see any additional markings to tell us anything about the guitar. But now let's talk about this stuff. I don't know what any of it does yet. We'll have to plug it in and find out together, but the toggle switch goes up, middle, and down, so I would assume that selects neck, middle, and bridge like normal. However, for our metal knurled knobs, this one feels normal. It moves as you would expect. However, these other three are notched, very similar to what I've experienced before on like a Les Paul Artist or some active jazz basses or P basses, where there's a 0 position and like a +5 and then a -5, whatever direction you're going. And since we have 3 of those, and I know we've got some crazy circuit boards in the back, I would assume those are boosts and cuts for bass trebles and mid frequencies. Or maybe these are doing something. I mean, we'll find out when we demo this thing. I guess I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Here's a look at our Wilkinson bridge. They're kind of cool. You can see the branding of it right here. And it's got this cool 2-tone thing going on, black as well as nickel. But similar to many modern day Fenders, they utilize a 2-point system. I've always thought this was cool. Their saddles, you loosen them and then you manually set where you want them to go. Then you can set the height using these Allen keys. And then unfortunately, we do not have a trem bar with this guitar, but that's okay. I don't really use trems anyways in the demos. But while cleaning this guitar, I got the opportunity to really appreciate the curves. So this is sculpted down a little bit, and then they continue that on over here. So it's a very shapely instrument, but over here it comes off to almost nothing, but then there's a little bit of an arm contour right there. If you get it in the light just right, you can see exactly where they cut it away, but it's not like super beveled by any means. You could definitely miss that. Then the bottom just has a little bit going on before it gets vastly more extreme over on this edge. But it is a considerably chunky guitar. Full thickness is about 1.7 inches. And I say that because I'm used to many guitars in this style kind of slimming out a little bit on the back or having a comfort cut, which don't get me wrong, we'll see later. This one has it. It's just nowhere near as extreme. It looks like a fairly blocky edge. But then, with it being neck through, it sculpts away very slim right here. It's a vast difference. But here we can see the center seam line. And you know what? I'm kind of curious. Is this actually the same blue hue and the clear coat has just yellowed with age and that's why it looks so different? I'm not really sure if they use poly or lacquer. I looked it up online. It looks like they say lacquer, but I'm not going to say one thing or the other. But you can see an area where it's been worn through and you can see a little bit more of a bluey blue, but I'll let you guys chime in the comments. But we can move on from our 2-piece maple top to a 2-piece maple neck, believe it or not, and then ebony fretboard is what looks like how this one was spec'd out. And then again, those abalone inlays. It's great because it's got a little bit of green and blue. It matches your greenish blue hue, but holy cow. This thing must play fantastically, or somebody used this as their moneymaker main stage guitar, because not only do you have your fret wear in the usual positions, it's all up and down the neck. This guy definitely played a lot of solo work as well as chords. I did notice a chip out of our fretboard right here. That might have happened at the factory though. But as far as the neck profile itself, it's got a lot of shoulder to it, but then it's really flat on the back. Like it has a little bit of roundedness to it, but it is a very skinny neck profile. And just like our last one, we do indeed have real mother of pearl side marker inlays. Those look quite nice. But if measurements are more your style, you got about a 1.68 inch nut width, increasing to 2.02 at the 12. And just how thin is thin? 0.78 first fret neck depth. Oh, wow. 0.83 by the 12th. Here that is on the contour gauge. The hands do not lie. As far as the scale length, looks like we're shooting for 25. It looks closest to me as a 14-inch fretboard radius. 12 isn't quite a perfect match. So skinny neck with a relatively flatter fretboard. Now we've got our headstock. It was probably my least favorite thing upon first unboxing, but now that it's been cleaned up, it's probably the cleanest area on the guitar. Like, we got a couple of scratches and dings and dents along the headstock. However, that flame maple cap really came to life after some cleaning. Now, unfortunately, our truss rod cover has been removed, which probably means he had to keep tweaking this thing. And I do not have a Carvin truss rod tool, so I cannot test that. I'm not sure if this is similar to how Gibsons are, where they have maybe a little bit of room for thread sticking out before it's considered maxed. But this was in Guitar Center's photos, so we can consider it as described. But speaking of missing things, I forgot something. Over here in our bridge pickup, not only do these have 22 pull pieces to make them unique, but they also have tilt adjustment. So you could tighten this screw this way if you wanted to slant your pickup for whatever reason. Or you can level them out and just have that for an extra sturdy pickup. These things don't move on you. But I wanted to point out, this screw's just straight up missing. There are a few screws gone on this guitar. I think we're all guilty of that. Something breaks on our newer guitar and we're like, yeah, we got that old thing. We can just harvest a couple of parts off of it. All strung back up, the things I notice as far as playability issues is the nut is a little bit too low on our D string here. Gives you kind of a sitar ring. So there's a few tricks you could use to get a temporary fix on that. But on a first impression playthrough, so far it doesn't seem like the fret wear affects anything, but I would consider this to currently have a medium action, and there is a little bit of relief in the neck. That's always nearly impossible to show on the camera. I would suggest maybe an 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn on the truss rod. Moving on to the back, here's where all the fun begins. So no, how dare Scratch X not get that out? Just kidding. That is some pretty heavy wear right there. The rest of the finish is quite nice though. I'm not sure what the body wings are made out of. It looks like it could potentially be alder. However, it does have a little bit of flame figuring to it, at least on that particular body piece. But here you can see that extensive body contour. But it really is only on the back. It still has a nice chunkiness to it over here on the edge. But speaking of the edge, yeah, there's a pretty nasty gouge right there. And don't worry, we've got some more over here. But check out the neck. It's 2 pieces of figured maple. I did not notice that when we first unboxed it. That's got some cool movement. And of course, that continues up the backside of your regular neck here too. So that is one magnificently cool looking piece. We even get a volute. You know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Is that figured mahogany? Because what we're seeing right here routed for our vibrato is more looking like mahogany. I suppose it could be a particularly dark species of maple. It's certainly lighter colored than our wings. But you know what? Looking at the grain right here, that definitely looks closer to maple to me. However, here is a good area to see the bare body wood where they join them together. I'm not sure what Carvin used, but those sure do look like hardware store screws, not specialized stuff. And let's just say some things have happened over here. So it looks like our battery had a new lead topper to it spliced on. Sometimes those break. That makes sense. Just not the most professional job there. And I did a little bit of research. Apparently, Carvin does have a system like this that has the active bass and treble cut like we were talking about, as well as in and out of phase. But we've got 2 printed circuit boards in here and a little compartment for our battery that hides another circuit board. It looks like we're going to be having some detailed fun during the playing demo. Although important to note, our back plate is chipped out on the corner right where the battery is. Let's just say it's a tight fit. It's not completely flush. And there is a repair sticker on the back here. Looks like this shop worked on it in the year 2002, so we know the guitar is at least older than that. So it might not have been serviced for 20 years. No way to know if those were the guys that did this, but that's what we're working with in here. I also found this kind of cool. There is a Velcro strip on the side, so this guy must have had something strapped onto there, or put that at the end of his lead to help keep it in place so we can wrap it around his strap. The Carvin serial numbers are kind of like Rickenbackers. They put them on their jack plate. Now, from what I've read online, there's no good way to date these. It's just a sequential number. So this is number 42,162, it looks like. But here's a good profile shot. I've seen our maple top join onto our body that also has that figuring. This would have pulled off a natural finish really nicely. But the green's cool, too. I would imagine these strap buttons are replaced. Nothing else is gold on this guitar. They're just regular buttons. Then check out the contours of the neck. Gotta love a good neck-through guitar. There's not enough of them out there. And even if he has to sink a little bit more money into fretwork and a professionalized setup, I'm honestly just impressed by what people could get from Carvin and what you can continue to get from these guys on the used market. These are highly spec'd, made-in-America guitars for less than the price of a brand new Epiphone. I think people just don't really know about them as much today. Or they just don't like their body shapes and want something more traditional. But there's something really cool to these. I would suggest trying one if you're looking for a fun player. Now, as far as super collector value and stuff, not really, because you gotta remember, a lot of these were custom ordered to someone's specs. What somebody wants is gonna differ from what other people are after. So it's not the same as like, hey, I really want this guitar model that was produced in 1996, and that can drive up prices for certain things. Such as, say, the Buckethead Les Paul, limited edition run, baritone scale length, oversized body. Gibson never really ends up doing it again. But that's what makes things great for players. Highly spec'd, well made. Based on the two that I've played anyway. Maybe there's some duds out there, but we do have locking tuners on this model. But all said and done, our green, lean, mean machine is 7 pounds, 1.6 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, hear how it sounds, and figure out what all this does. Okay, let's discover this together. I did a little bit of fiddling, so I'm slightly familiar. I'm going to start with all the mini toggles in the upwards position, which I believe is just regular mode. I could be wrong on that. But all of our notch knobs are directly in the center. So it's a very bright, active sounding guitar. That's the neck pickup, by the way. You got to be careful how heavy of a hand you have, because it easily goes to from. So now we're going to start with our bottom switch. At first you might just think, hey, this doesn't do anything. That's because it's your out of phase position. So in the middle position only, you go from this to the quacky sound. So with that one being down, meaning on, I'm pretty confident these ones being up will be whatever these are doing off. So now we'll start on this top one. Let's see what that does to the tone with the neck pickup. That sounds like it might be in conjunction with some of these other knobs. I would imagine this knob is your bass. I think this guitar needs as much bass as it can get, so I'm gonna leave that. Well, I should probably be fair and leave it at the middle setting. So let's see what this next one does. I think I like that one just rolled off. So we'll put it back to the middle. And this other knob, I can't quite figure out what it's doing here. It's almost like it's panning in between the two pickups. That's exactly what that's doing. So that actually does open up some additional tonal opportunities. If you just leave this in the middle position, while yes, you can go, okay, this does the bridge, and this does the neck, and this does both, but you can technically blend it any way you want. So here's just a little bit favoring the neck. Now let's see what this last switch does. So here it is, regular again. We'll start with our neck. Something in the middle position. Not gonna lie, I don't like the tones that I'm getting out of this. Now, I'm sure there's certain situations, but for me, traditional rock and roll guy, nah, too bright. Now, how I would set it up is I would leave these two in their middle position, roll this one completely off, and then that's the closest to regular passive sounds, in my opinion. If you're curious what that last knob is, that's just a regular volume. It moves very smoothly. So for our dirty segment, I'm gonna leave all that stuff off and leave it in that position that we just talked about. I might toggle this, but you can see these active pickups. I suppose you could say that they're a little bit microphonic. Or maybe that's just how they're supposed to be in the circuit. I don't know. But here we go. Yep, that confirms microphonic. It depends how much power you have on that knob. If you roll it down, you can get away with it. But I was wanting a little bit more treble in there. So this is at middle. So would I want to take that directly on stage in front of a million people? Probably not, but at bedroom levels, it can be kind of fun. Just keep chugging. There we go, Sam's new Carvin. What are my final thoughts? If there were my guitar, I would be gutting everything electronically because I don't personally have a use for any of that stuff, and I know these pickups sound better than that when they're not all active and going for those types of tones. I certainly enjoyed my Ultra V playing a little bit more. And I will say this neck profile is not for me. It's very slim. I prefer something just a little bit bigger. But if you like having the shoulders and that flatter style neck, somebody clearly enjoyed playing this, and that's what's great about guitars. There's something for everybody. But as far as the build quality and the woods that they used on this and the construction, I thought it was quite nice. Now, I still think this one needs a detailed setup. But as far as playing it as it was now, the only thing I noticed that was strange is they have the G string way higher than all the other strings. Now that might have been because they wanted to hit that string more prominently when doing like certain chord things, so I just let that be. But there could also be another thing, like kind of how we discovered the D string has that sitar-like ring to it. I didn't notice that too bad when playing electric, but that might be why that's there. So, Sam, I would suggest a detailed setup on this, but I went ahead and cleaned it for you, so that's one step closer, and you did get that case, which is a bonus. But all right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed checking out this cool Carvin. If there's a guitar in the United States that you need help getting elsewhere, or even if you just want your new guitar featured on the show, you can still use my forwarding service for that if you want a video on it. But thanks for watching, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.